This video is still explaining operating with radicals, but this time I'm focusing specifically on multiplying radicals and dividing radicals. Because adding and subtracting have different processes than multiplying and dividing. In order to add and subtract, they have to have the exact same variables to actually combine them. But in multiplying and dividing, it doesn't necessarily have to have that. So multiplying radicals, to multiply radicals, you have to multiply the coefficients, then the radicands, and reduce the variables. So we're going to put our answer in radical and decimal form. So I'm going to use my calculator to help me with the radical form, and then decimal forms is using a calculator straight to put the numbers in. So on this one, because they are all numbers, you could actually just plug this straight into your calculator, but I do want to show you how to do this all by hand, especially if you have letters. So it says you have to multiply the coefficients. The 3 and the 4 are coefficients, so you actually have to multiply those together. And then the 21 and the 14 are your radicands. You have to multiply those together. As long as you have the same index on each of them, you can multiply them. This is a square root and this is a square root. Therefore, we can multiply them. So 3 times 4 is 12. We have the square root of 21 times 14 is going to be 294. So we can put this into our calculator. And we have 12 square root of 294. We get 205 and 76 hundredths. Now, I will say we could have done this straight in our calculator by doing 3 square root of 21, close the parentheses, times 4 square root of 14, close parentheses. And we get the same value. Okay, so the reason I'm wanting to show you this one, though, is so that we can simplify this with the radicals, given in radical form. So this is approximately 205 and 76 hundredths. Now, to show you how to put this into radical form, we go back to using our calculator into our y equals. We're going to keep the 12 on the outside. So I'm going to write this in a different color. 12 times, because that's our original coefficient. What we're going to do is break this up into a new coefficient and a new radicand. So what I do is I take the square root of 294 to get my the value here to know where to start at. Go to the y equals, and we do the radicand 294 divided by x raised to the index. This is a square, so raised to the second power. And then again, we want to get started at 17. So we go to our second window and we start it at 17. And then we go to our table. And we find go up until we find our whole numbers. So again, even 1.5 is nice, but it's not a whole number. Keep going. And then we have 7 and 6. Those are our first whole numbers. So what happens is that this part right here, square root of 294, becomes 7 as your coefficient, and then 6 as your radicand. So it becomes 7 square root of 6. Now what you do is just multiply your coefficients. 12 times 7. So 12 times 7 is 84, and we keep our radicand. So this is actually equal an exact answer of 84 square root of 6. And we can actually check that. So 84 square root of 6 gives us the exact same decimal we had earlier. So this is radical form. You can put in your calculator just to get the decimal value, but this is the simplified version completely. On example B, we have numbers and letters, so again, we have to multiply. The coefficient of this one is 1, and the coefficient of this one is also 1, so we don't have any coefficients that we have to worry about. So we're going to have the square root of, because these are square root and square root, that means we can multiply. you multiply your radicands, so the things that go together. So 15 and 6 will multiply together. Then x to the 4th and x to the 1st will go together. And then y squared and y to the 5th will multiply together. So this will become the square root of, so 15 times 6 is 90. X to the 4th times x is x to the 5th, because you add the exponents. Y squared times y to the 5th becomes y to the 7th. So what we have to do is simplify this. The letters will simplify the same way as we've been doing. So in both of our answers, the radical form and the decimal form will actually have the letters in the exact same way. But our number, the first time we'll do it will be in a decimal form, and the second time we'll actually have it simplified like we did over here using our calculator. So the decimal value, so the square root of 90 is 9 49/100. So we're going to put, this is approximately 9 49/100. And then we're going to take the square root of x to the 5th. Okay, so it's really a 2. 2 goes into 5 2 times with 1 left over. So I know we're going to have the square root of x to the 1st left over. Then we're going to have 2 goes into 7 3 times. So that's going to be y to the 3rd. We're going to have 1y left over. So again, if you want to go back and look at some fine radical expressions, please do so. So this is our approximate. Now to do our exact answer, we're going to actually have the same with our letters, our coefficient of letters and our radicand of letters, but our numbers will change. So we know we're going to start with 9. So if we go to y equals, we do 90 divided by x, and again it was a square root, so x squared. We're going to start it at 9. And then we'll look at our graph, our table. So we go up. We want to get whole numbers. So 3 and 10. So our coefficient number is 3 and our radicand number is 10. So we'll have 3. And then we still have our coefficient letters. So x squared, y cubed, square root of. Our radicand number is 10. X to the 1st, y to the 1st. So this is the exact answer. This is the rounded answer. Notice that the letters are the same in both rounded and exact, but it's just the decimal in rounded and then the simplified version in the exact. Now in these next 3 problems, we're just going to get the decimal values and we're going to simplify the actual variables. So we're not going to do the exact answers of our radicals like we did on these 2. We're just going to get our decimal values. So we still want to make sure that we fix it before we do anything else with it. So our coefficient, we're multiplying, so our coefficients can multiply because we have both of these are square roots. If they're the same index, we can multiply. So it's 2 times 3. Then we have inside the radicands, we have a 7 times 14. But then we have our t times t squared. So we got to make sure we are careful on all those. So 2 times 3 is 6. Then we have the square root of. So 7 times 14 is 98. And then we have t times t squared is t cubed. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the decimal value of this, and then we're going to simplify the t cubed. So the decimal value of 6 square root 98, 6 square root 98, close parentheses, is 59 and 39 rounds up to 40 hundredths. So 59 and 40 hundredths or 59 and 4 tenths. So 59 and 4 tenths or 40 hundredths. And then we have to worry about the square root of t cubed. So 2 goes into 3 one time. So we have t to the 1st with 1 left over. So we still have the square root of t to the 1st. And that's our decimal value. Okay. So again, I'm not going to simplify it to the exact answer this time on these 3. On example D, they both have square roots, so we can multiply them. So again, there's a coefficient of 1, coefficient of 1. The radicands, 2 multiplies to the 9, and then a multiplies to a cubed. So we have the square root of 2 times 9 is 18. A times a cubed is a to the 4th. Okay. So we're going to simplify by taking the square root of 18. We get 4 and 24 hundredths. So this is approximately 4 and 24 hundredths. And then the square root of a to the 4th. So 2 goes into 4 twice. So a to the 2nd, but with nothing remaining. So that means I have no radical left over. This is our answer. 4 and 24 hundredths, a squared. On E, we have the same index, so square root and square root. That means we can multiply. So we take our coefficients and multiply our coefficients. 7 times 3. Then our radicand. So the 5 multiplies to the 20. And then the x multiplies to the x to the 5th. So that becomes 7 times 3 is 21. Square root of 5 times 20 is 100. X times x to the 5th is x to the 6th. So now we just do 21 times the square root of 100 because those are the numbers. 21 square root 100. And we get 210. So that's our number we write down, so 210. It's not a decimal, so therefore we can actually put equals 210. And then we'll take the square root of x to the 6th. So again, 2 goes into 6 3 times, so it's x cubed, with nothing left over, so there's no radicand. This would be our final answer, 210 x cubed. So in order to do these, we had to have the same index. So if we had a cube root and a cube root, we could still do it. If we have a cube root and a square root, you cannot do that with the letters. You can't actually combine them, but so we take this. You want to make sure you have the same index. Okay. On the division, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to simplify the radical completely, then use the calculator to give answers in decimal form. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. We still want to simplify the variables, but we want to get the values in decimal form, so just like we did these last 3 problems. Okay. So A, we still do the coefficient with coefficient and the radicand with radicand. So we got to simplify. So this is inside. These both have the square root symbol. So we can have the square root of 21 divided by 7 is 3. And then x to the 5th divided by x cubed is, the 5 is bigger and it's on top, so it's x on top. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So I have the square root of 3x squared. So again, number, we want to take the square root of 3. Square root of 3, close parentheses. We get 1 and 73 hundredths. This is approximately 1 and 73 hundredths. And then we take the square root of x squared. 2 goes into 2 one time with nothing left over, so we have no radicand left. That's our final answer. On B, since these are just square roots and no letters, we can actually just type this into our calculator. So we have the square root of 52. So again, calculator. Square root of 52, close the parentheses, divided by the square root of 13, close the parentheses. And we get 2. That's actually our final answer. In the newer calculators, you can actually do the alpha y equals, and it turns into a fraction, the numerator denominator. You can do the square root of 52, and then go down, and then go to square root of 13, press enter, and you also get 2. So the answer is just 2. On C, we want to simplify. So we have 16 over 24, because these are both square root, 16 over 24. Inside the square root, there's a 16, actually we can actually do it all together. It's the square root of 16, close parentheses, divided by the square root of 24, close parentheses. And that is 82 hundredths. That's on the outside. That's your coefficient. Okay, so we could have done this 16 divided by 24, math, enter. So we really have this. I'm going to show you how we can write this. This will be our final answer in the end, but I'm going to show you what we can do here. So if I want to simplify it before I put it all in my calculator, kind of like I did over here on example A, put it in the blue. So I'm going to keep it in the square root symbol, but I have to do 16 divided by 24. Now I hit math, enter. So I have a fraction. So in blue, I'm going to have the square root of 2 over 3, and then w cubed is still on the top. Okay. Now I can actually put it into the decimal format, and so I'll have my answer. So now I can take the square root of 2 divided by 3, then close the parentheses. And this will give me my decimal part. So again, that was still 82 hundredths. Like if I had done the square root of 16 over the square root of 24, I would have gotten 82 hundredths. This is approximately 0 and 82 hundredths. But then I still have to simplify the square root of w cubed. So it's on the top. So square root of w cubed, 2 goes into 3 one time, so I have w to the first, but I still have 1 left over. So w to the first. Now it was on the top, so I just keep it on the top. And this is our final answer. On part D, I have just numbers, so we can take the square root of 5, close parentheses, divided by the square root of 7, close parentheses, because they're just numbers. Plug it in, and you get 85 hundredths. So approximately 0 and 85 hundredths. Because they're both square roots, we can do that. On E, we also have just numbers, so we can type this into our calculator. So we have 3 square root of 11, close parentheses, divided by the square root of 3, close parentheses. And we get 5 and 74 hundredths. Now, on the newer calculator, it's actually a little bit easier to see this. If you go to alpha, y equals, you can do your 3 square root of 11, and then, 3 square root of 11, and then on the bottom, the square root of 3. So it actually makes it look like this exact same, because this one with the parentheses, it makes it look a little different, but on the newer calculators, you can actually see it as a fraction, and you get the exact same answer though, 5 and 74 hundredths. So our answer is approximately 5 and 74 hundredths. So you do these the same way as you do the multiplication. You do the actual values, the numbers, using your calculator, and then you simplify the variables, okay? You could actually try and simplify them with rationalizing the denominator, which we're not going to talk about right now, to get a nice clean number on the denominator instead of a radical. Okay, so that is multiplying and dividing radicals. You can combine things because variables you're allowed to multiply even if they're not the exact same. But adding and subtracting you can't, which is why I separated these two videos.